Hey everyone, I'm Devin from Lucky Duck Games. I'm the crowdfunding and community specialist. And tonight I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by Kwanchai Moriya. And we're going to be talking about Food Chain Magnate. Thanks so much for joining me today, Kwanchai.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, and sorry about my little sparse office here. I just moved, and it looks like I'm in some kind of weird detention cell with.
I was
but
going to ask, do you even
I
like board games? Like, do you like
yeah.
you're
Normally
not
there's a
showing
wall.
anything, man. I'm
Normally
having
there's
to
a wall in my
represent
board games.
everything.
Yeah, you have a much better room. My office usually looks like that, but I have a really
I
small staircase, and I can't carry the games at the time. So
I suspect that based off of our conversation pre-recording that you probably have more board games than me
probably
if it was the volume that you're
it
talking
was
about.
two truck like it was two trailer fulls to the top with just games, and
That's
I
that's
had some.
that's exciting. That makes me happy. Moving
Yeah,
it
not
does not make
my
me happy.
buddies. My buddies were not happy who are helping me move. They're like opening box upon box of games, and it was just like, just don't look, guys. Just
They
move
earned
along.
their beer and pizza in terms of heavy
Indeed.
lifting for sure. So I wanted to start off a little bit while I did bring you onto this interview in this conversation so that we could talk about Food Chain Magnet, for which you were the artist for the special edition that we did at Lucky Duck Games. I wanted to, I guess, share with you and the audience as to my history with you as an artist. So for those who don't know, I came into the board game space as a content creator, and I started online and did digital writing and blogs, and did reviews of board games, and shifted into video and then into the publisher side of things. But one of my first games and one of my first connections was In the Hall of the Mountain King by Burnt Island Games, and I'm a very big fan of them as a publisher. And then also, that was the first time I was introduced to your art, and so I absolutely love the visual style. And I know that you've done a lot of different ones. I actually went on Board Game Geek prior, like last week, when we were having this conversation and trying to set up a time to talk. And I think it was like 95 credits or something at this point on Board
Yeah,
Game Geek. It was
it's a lot.
it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. I was impressed. I was just scrolling through all of the attributions that you have, and it was an impressive journey. And so that is what I wanted to start the conversation with, was to ask about your journey to becoming a well-respected board game artist in the community.
Yeah, that's a good question. I often look back, and it feels like a very tangled path to get to where I am now, to this
Yeah.
weird little empty office. Um, yeah, I am a board gamer first. So in college, a friend of mine, Josiah, he brought over Carcassonne, and I was like, it was like a moment, like, oh. And at the time, like, the only games you could find on Board Game Geek and as a resource was like Puerto Rico,
Hmm.
Settlers, Power Grid, El Grande.
Yeah.
Like, it was like very few, and they were all euros, and I was like so jazzed, scouring thrift stores for copies of like Original Survive because it hadn't been reprinted yet. Like printing out, like, people would post scans of old magazine, tactical military sim games, and I would print
Yep.
them out and try them out. Just anything I get my hands on, I was trying out. So I was doing my history degree at UC Davis, and I since have finished that degree, and then went into illustration.
Okay.
Went to an illustration degree here in Pasadena, which is why I moved to LA.
Nice.
Um, and then I finished that degree. Long story short, and then after that, getting my illustration degree, I try to just be a traditional illustrator, a print illustrator, which is still a very changing career now. It's like, because print is dying and then coming back in weird ways, and there's a lot of different needs for illustrators.
Hmm.
Basically, the short of it is I didn't have a job for a long time, and I was just working as an after school tutor around the block here, um, helping like 6-year olds do tempera paint, which was still art, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for
then I got
sure.
my
I have
first
a
gig
teaching
on.
background, so I appreciate this story.
Yeah, and I honestly, I loved it, but it was the art adjacent, and it wasn't like illustration specific.
Yeah.
And then I got my first gig through Board Game Geek, the geek mail system. It was like,
Okay.
and Aaron from Sands of Time Games, I got my first contract with, which was Catacombs,
Yeah.
the disc
That
flipping
that's
game.
that's that's a lot of the credits. You have a lot of catacomb stuff on there.
Yeah, he makes a lot of experience. And I'm credited for all of them because it is like, anyway. So that was
Yeah.
my first game. I took it to a convention, Origins, and then Gen Con of that year. I went to Essen to Spiel that year also,
Hmm.
and I just hoofed it with Catacombs, a few other like early games, and then
Yeah.
mostly like art school portfolio, which is like, you know, pastel drawings and studies of masters. And then I from there it built up. I feel like going to conventions was a big deal, and meeting people
It
face to
is.
face
Yeah.
at a time when art was really needed in board games. I got my first early projects, Dinosaur Island and Kodama, and the game through
Yep.
Pandasaurus. And then from there, I've been going to conventions every year, and it's built up to where it is now. And yeah, I take on about 5 or 6 projects at a time.
Okay.
Usually like one or two big ones and 3 or 4 smaller card games. And because of that, I have like, yeah, about 100 games to my credit. But it's funny. It's funny how it's happened. I don't think there was much of a plan. There was a lot of just energy burning hard to try and get to be an illustrator.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I get to be a part of projects that really feel like prestige projects, kind of like Food Chain
Hmm.
Magnate, which is like this beloved game. I had a copy of the original game for before the deluxe was announced, and
Yeah.
it's one of the better, more approachable splatter games that I really enjoy. It hits the table a lot. And I doing this, I was also a part of like acquired deluxe edition. Like, to be asked as an
Yeah.
illustrator to do the deluxe version of things, it feels like so surreal.
Well, it's interesting to me, as you mentioned, I feel like Food Chain Magnet, while I know that some people are very fond of its art, its original art style to me harkens back to kind of the games that you were talking about that you first encountered, like, Carcassonne, Puerto Rico, El Grande, all of these older Euros and these, kind of like long-standing classics. And I'm glad that there was that need because I do feel like visualizing where we are now with games with the kind of I guess like old school style of art, it doesn't work in my brain. I like where we are now and the intense affection for like visual appeal that you and other artists are bringing by the work that you guys are doing. So I'm glad that we are where we are.
Me
I think you
too.
guys
Yeah.
have been a wonderful contribution to the I think growth of the industry. Um,
Thank you.
Specifically with Food Chain Magnet, it sounds like you do have a little bit of connection to it. But what my question was, do you have any history or personal connection with Food Chain Magnet prior to working on the project? So it sounds like you were familiar with it, and based off of some of the games that you shared earlier, are you more of a Euro player?
Yeah, especially my wife too. She grew up in Germany, so she like, it's board games are in the blood.
Yeah.
And she tells me how to do my turns so I don't lose, that kind of a player. She's really good. And so she's more of a I'm like I
It's a
like every
teachable
sort of
moment. It's a teachable moment.
I like every kind of board game. And Food Chain Magnate is, I really like that sort of 50s Americana theme that the original game had,
Hmm.
with those that black and white sort of, yeah, it harkens back to like this happier time when things were just just getting your burger or your soda.
Sure.
And I like the flow of the game. I like that as a splatter game, it's kind of, it picks up quickly and then it slows as all your choices become very complex. I
Yeah.
like games like that. The engine on Food Chain Magnet is like quicker than other splatter games, which I've tried a lot of them.
Hmm.
My favorite splatter game is Roads and Boats, actually.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's a whole, like, that's a whole, it feels like a whole weekend kind of a game. And you can't have like 1.5-year-olds like I have right now running around because those pieces will go flying. But yeah, I like splatter games. I like board games in general.
Awesome. Awesome. Turning to the process of creating cover art for, some like more iconic or prestige games like you are, have on rotation now. I guess since you have so many credits, as we've mentioned, by now where you are, do you have any tried and true focal points when starting on cover art, or is kind of each project unique?
I don't know. I feel like as an artist, I have wondered, especially as of late, like what my style is.
Hmm.
Like if you see something by Vincent Dutrait. Like I just bought the Lord of the Rings duel, which is like the cover is so good, and you instantly know it's him. Or
Yeah.
Kyle Farron with any of like Arcs, which just came out, or Oath.
Mhm.
Like it's so good. And I think I just saw an NPR article with like Kyle Farron, like he's like quoting something about AI art. It is just so cool to see artists that I know that have also grown in the same time period as me have like such a significant style and approach. And I don't know if I have that.
I think you
But anyway,
do, but I want to hear what you say though.
yeah. So my what I've kind of come around to is that I feel like one of my things is that I can make striking, sort of compelling compositions, which are
The
quite
exact word
they
I was about to say.
okay, good. Yeah.
Hush.
Hey, I'm onto something. Yeah, they like I can try a lot of different themes. I can approach a lot of different games, and each cover might be very different in how they look. But as a composer of the image, I feel like I'm trying to be as creative, as edgy or interesting or unique as possible, especially given the genre. Like in the Hall of the Mountain King is a game about trolls,
Mhm.
and if you just say troll game, you can think of like 7 covers, which are all brown, which all have a couple of trolls in them, and they're like. And I was like, how can I make it really interesting? So for that game, I'm like, let's start with like red and fire, and then let's also make them as human, like as human looking as possible, so that you can the observer can kind of attack, like it doesn't look so just like some soup like mythological creature. So I
Yeah.
like took some reference shots of myself and some friends to try and get like the angles and the lighting. I don't know. Half the time I'm trying to make it up as I go, to be honest, and giving myself challenges to try and overcome. Like, try and make a cool troll cover, try and make a cool, compelling cover about high rises, try and
Yeah.
make, trying to remix things to make the cover interesting for its specific theme or genre.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to go in this direction, but just because you were, I guess, posing the theoretical question of what is your style, in a obsequious flattery, I do think striking is a great word. It's something that comes to mind whenever I think of your artwork. I think that you also have a pretty dramatic use of color. Like I was thinking, I saw I was going back through some of your old covers before we decided to sit down and have this conversation, and I was looking at the Fireball Island artist series, and obviously I was looking at Food Chain Magnate. I was looking at In the Hall of the Mountain King. So You've Been Eaten, and I think that you were going back when you're talking about the classes that you were taking, like the pastels, like your color palette seems really natural to whatever the theme is. And I agree with you that there are a lot of really amazing artists in the industry, like Vincent Dutrait. And I just lost at Eagle Griffin Games. He does like
Tool.
yeah, Ian O'Toole. And there are other artists that as soon as I see the artwork, I actually see the artwork first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I see the game second. And for your work, I see the game first and the art second. But that's not any a detracting comment. That like I
Mm-hmm.
think that your artwork s- serves the game really well, and it just feels natural when I see it. And then as soon as I look and I'm like, oh, Kwanchai did that. I'm like, of course he did. Of course he did that. But like it fades just enough to elevate like the focus of the game, and then you get to appreciate all the nuances of what you've done. So like I think that you are very recognizable, but also, I think the research that you do as to what your goal is for each artwork actually does a great job of honoring the intent of what the game is, or getting the spirit of the game right. So uh,
Thanks.
just
That's a big. That's
just
a huge
just my
compliment.
two
Thank you.
cents. um,
That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
so in terms of tackling each project for Food Chain Magnate specifically, what were your goals when creating art for this game?
So the original cover, it does everything it needs to do, right? It tells you a little bit about the theme. There's a little bit of food. There's that 50s kind of Americana vibe of waitresses and
Mm-hmm.
drive-ins and that kind of a thing. So I was like, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we take that? And what is the thing about the game that I want to like like push up the most, glow that up.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just start. Like so I did a bunch of sketches about with waitresses as their central figure, as like the main
Hmm.
image. And then just building like my idea was to have a waitress and just have like a maelstrom of activity around that waitress, cooks moving in the background, people in the front. In the end, it was a much simpler composition, but that was the original intent.
Yeah. So the note that I had for this follow-up question is that the art seems very character focused, and going off of what you were saying in the previous line of questioning, is that a conscious choice across more of your work, to kind of not focus as or not highlight centrally as much the setting or necessarily like an action, but like the creatures or the people that are involved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it's called a crutch in my. Yeah,
I wouldn't have identified it as that, but
so traditionally in high school and in college and also in my art degree, I am an oil painter, and
okay,
mostly I just drew people. And so part of me being an illustrator amongst a bunch of genres in board games is like doing the best I can to not lean on that crutch as much. I
sure,
spent a whole year just taking on projects where it wasn't people weren't the uh main thing on the cover because I was like, can I do it? But I think that I like covers where there's some human connection. It doesn't have to be a human face. It could be like a close up of a robot's, like it kind of looks like a
yeah,
face, or it
yeah,
could be a tree that just looks like a tree that is in a backyard that you loved as a child, right? Like there has to be something human. Otherwise, like a lot of covers are like you just like don't care. And honestly,
sure,
I want to make covers to me. I want to feel emotionally charged about them, even if it's for like a like So You've Been Eaten is about a miner, a space miner inside of a stomach of a giant creature. But I want to feel like that's a piece of art, you know?
yeah.
So with any piece, I try and make something either painterly or make the subject really, have like an emotion if possible. Like these are like high-minded themes. Like I start there at least, but who knows where I
Sure.
end up.
No, I mean, I think that reflects, I think that is reflected in the work that you do. I mean, that seems to, I guess, give voice to the instincts that I have when I look at your work. So, uh, for Food Chain Magnet specifically, what's your favorite detail of the final cover design?
Mm, that's a good question. Um, I mean, I like the character. That's where I started, and that's
Hmm.
in art school. I went to a art center college of design, and mostly it's a college that's known to produce illustrators that work in the movie industry, so working in animation, concept art, movies, films. And part of the one of the classes we took is like you throw out the teacher always taught us you throw out your first ideas because that's like you want to like clear the pipes out, get all your bad ideas out so that you're like
Yeah,
hot and ready. Your muscles are like your brain and your muscles are all like primed to get the good stuff out.
that's
I
fair.
I always hated that. And so with most covers, I like start with the thing I like the most and just like get right into it, which
Yeah,
means that I feel like I can usually capture an emotion better. So usually it's a character, usually it's the main thing. I like to start with the thing I like first and not work up to it. So yeah, for this one it was the waitress. But if I had to choose something that's not the central character, it's that like truck thing in the back.
yeah.
So I looked up a bunch of like 50s trucks and
For
delivery
the
trucks and
viewers, I'll have reference images up through the magic of editing. But Kwanchai and I are doing this just from memory.
so here it is. You can see it now. Devin pulled it up. So it's like it's an amalgamation of a bunch of like Craigslist ads for defunct old air conditioned trucks from like the 60s or the 40s, the 50s, and like
Yeah.
whatever I could find on Google Images and just kind of like made a truck up.
Mhm.
But I kind of like it. It gives the feeling like besides these
Yeah.
characters, they've all got something to do, and it also like nails a composition in this like shape in the back. So it's
Yes.
kind of like a
Yeah.
plus thing.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's a good like background anchor for me to feel like she's in a real, in a real setting. Um okay, so the last question that I have for you is in this project, you crafted an updated look for a very popular game. And my question or curiosity is that if you had the chance to work on another existing game and do your own spin on the cover art, which game would you pick?
Oh man, that's good. Um, Shoot, that's a good question. Okay. Um, there's a game that came out in the 70s called Wiz War that was redone by
Okay.
Fantasy Flight
Okay.
8th edition. I think it's called Wiz War 8th edition. But anyway, it's a weird name, but man, is that game good. I like the
Okay.
original game. I
Wiz
have like
War. I'm
copies.
gonna have to
It's
do some
called Wiz
research after
War. So
this.
it's a game about battling wizards. It's a very small, like no holds barred, like octagon wizards just like casting like boots to your face and summoning boulders. And I love it. But the original art's super wonky. It looks like someone just like drew it on a notepad. And the updated version that Fantasy Flight put out is cool, but it just feels too generic.
Yeah.
I would love to do a cool cover with wizards just casting spells at each other's faces.
Wiz War. Okay.
That's
Good to know.
that's one. This will never happen, but Space Hulk is one of my favorite games.
I have this the card game version of it over the Space Hulk
Oh,
Death
Death
Angels
Angel.
right there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I love the original game. I have all three editions, including like the old first edition, and I would love to do like a cover that's just this giant beefy Terminator that takes up the entire cover. Every little
I gotta be
detail.
honest, a Kwanchai Moriya Warhammer like might do it for me. That might
Dude,
be that might be one of the ultimate things for me is
so we
seeing.
just moved. So we just moved, and there was one trip in the truck that I just put open topped boxes of models that probably never get painted, right? Like
Nice.
they're primed and they're on their bases and they're just carefully set. There's a last trip, right? Because these can't have things stacked on top of them, right?
Okay.
So bunch of Warhammer minis, Terminators and stuff,
One of
random
my
stuff that
all-time favorites, like top one, top two games is Forbidden Stars. So what
oh yeah.
Warhammer
Yeah.
love is much appreciated.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that, a Space Hulk game, or like if they ever somehow made Chaos in the Old World again,
Okay.
and they
Yep.
didn't want just a brown cover, I could do an awesome cover
You
for
you don't like
that.
turgid brown? That's not your look.
Yes, skin color, leather.
Leather. That's
But
great.
yeah, those are some games I love that I would love to take a stab at.
Okay. Well, Kwanchai, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it. And for all of you viewers out there, we're excited to get Food Chain Magnate to your door as fast as possible. Hopefully, you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye bye.